Seltzer Kings.
Podcasts.
I found a kid who swings a golf club like a dream. I'd like to try to qualify him for the U.S. Amateurs.
Coming to Apple TV Plus.
What's your name?
I'm not into older guys, but I'm flattered.
A new comedy series, Stick.
I don't want to go on this trip.
Your mouth's saying one thing, but those eyes are saying something else.
From the home of Ted Lasso.
This is your shot at redemption? This is your mulligan?
Owen Wilson.
This game takes and it takes. The game's finally giving me something back.
Stick.
You know Arnold Palmer?
Iced tea, lemonade, mix it.
I'm missing a nap for this.
Streaming June 4th on Apple TV Plus.
Ask Kevin, I find the English version of the dustbin scams equally nauseating, just for a different reason. Ass.
The following podcast contains...
Oh, that is terrible. That's the most appalling, disgusting, revolting thing I've ever seen.
explicit language.
Hello and welcome to the podcast that asks a simple question. When you tried to trade me your Melton Milton for my Richie Wretch, what the hell were you thinking? I'm your host, Dave Bledsoe, and this is episode number 486. Yeah, we fixed the numbers. It could use more Snot edition of the show. We talk about the grossest fad of the 1980s, the Garbage Pail Kids. Stay tuned. The What the Hell Were You Thinking podcast is brought to you by the Dave Oman Gotta Drink 'Em All collectible card game from Seltzer Kings. In the Dave Oman card game, you play an aging, intoxicated podcast host desperately searching for free drinks at a bar. You'll face off against annoyed bartenders, angry bouncers, irritated patrons, and women who want nothing to do with you. By collecting bullshit cards, you can build a deck full of lies, excuses, deflections, and potentially criminal behavior to accomplish your goal of getting drunk without actually spending any money while avoiding the dreaded Gavin card. Dave Oman, the collectible card game from Seltzer Kings. Find it in the Seltzer Kings merch shop or wherever imaginary card games are sold.
Dodger has never had a family or a friend he could call his own. Until now. What's that?
They came out to help us.
Meet the Garbage Pail Kids. Starring Nat Nerd, Windy Winston, Messy Tessie.
Give him a chance, Tangerine. You'll like it.
Alligator, Valerie Vomit, Lisa Gray.
I'm gonna get fired for this.
Foul Phil.
Nice tender toes.
The Garbage Pail Kids movie. They may not be pretty, but boy, they make great friends. Starring Anthony Newley and Mackenzie Aston. The Garbage Pail Kids movie.
In the days before every damn thing clicked, word, and buzzed,
Well, sure, Grandpa.
kids had to find entertainment in simpler toys. I mean, hell, I once traced Star Trek phasers onto cardboard and cut them out with scissors and played with them on the playground.
Because you were poor?
No. I mean, yes, but no. I did this because we used our imagination back then. Not every toy needed to be this immersive, simulated reality. Sometimes a simple stick provided an entire universe of entertainment.
When we had to do it in Harlem, it was called poverty.
Leaving economics aside, some of the best toys I had were simple, analog, and inexpensive. Take, for example, the Army Man.
Thank you for your service.
I mean those little simple green Army Man toys. Cheap plastic soldiers in various combat poses provided hours of entertainment as I lined them up and fought imaginary battles on my bedroom floor or the kitchen table.
You didn't have any friends.
I did. They were just at home playing with their little green Army Men. That's how cool they were. When my friends did come around, then we became the Army Men, with an arsenal of plastic weapons of varying realism.
Autoloader.
That's Italian. You can go pump or auto.
The 45 long slide with laser sighting.
These are brand new. We just got them in. That's a good gun. Just touch the trigger, the beam comes on, and you put the red dot where you want the bullet to go. You can't miss. Anything else?
Phased plasma rifle in a 40-watt range.
Long summer afternoons became protracted battlefields with the smell of sulfur drifting over them. From those little red paper cap smokes, Although, I gotta be honest, for my money, ring caps were preferred because they were louder and more realistically loaded. Those were glorious days, and you know what? Not a screen in sight.
Why are you so old?
Of course, sometimes it was too cold or rainy, and much to my mother's dismay, we were forced to stay indoors. And she told us to do whatever to entertain ourselves, so long as, we did it,
Do it quietly.
Her preference for my sister and I to read, draw, or anything that didn't turn into a shouting match between us, which meant no board games, which would inevitably end badly.
You cheater! You're the cheater!
So it behooved us to find things to occupy us without bringing us into conflict, and most importantly, without making too much goddamn noise, which is how busy books came into our lives. Those activity books meant mostly for road trips, but they were also great for rainy days at home, and it was in procuring such books that my sister and I were introduced into the world of gross toys for kids, which were often sold in proximity to comics and busy books, and quickly became a passion for both of us. Which brings me to this week's topic, the disgusting world of Garbage Pail Kids trading cards in the 80s and the world of grossness that was considered appropriate for children long before the internet made disgusting de rigueur. We should probably begin talking about the history of the trading card.
Oh, do we really have to?
The trading card is just a piece of thin cardboard with stuff printed on it, nothing more than packaging, really. Their history, however, begins with a gentleman's calling card. Starting in the late 17th century, when rich dudes came around to other rich dudes' houses, they would hand the servant their card.
May I have your card?
These cards would have all their pertinent information. Names, titles, where they lived. It goes something like Lord Reginald Dallyforth Pythwick Smithing, the third Earl of Smellmore, Count of Ball Saggy Manor.
At your service.
This was so other nobles could keep track of who he was trading his daughters off to in exchange for power and influence. Shit, at least they used to trade women for tangible things like land and livestock. Anyway, by the early 18th century, middle-class merchants were using trade cards, which were in essence tiny advertisement for their establishment or business. By the Victorian era, such trade cards could be ornately printed lithographs for even the most banal of businesses. Is Reggie's Fish and Chips, number 4 East Pitt Street, Shiden, Fuckington, Northeast. Ask for a chamber pot topper special.
It sounds delightful.
Since trade cards were already advertising, it made sense for them to transition to brands after they were used by individuals. And that's how, starting roughly around 1875, so-called cigarette cards came along. And now, as we learned in episode 484...
That's a plug.
The mass production of cigarettes kicked off around that time, and manufacturers were looking for ways to advertise their product. Conveniently, the very nature of cigarette packaging provided an answer. Thus, the cigarette cards were born. These were simply pieces of cardboard inserted into the packaging of cigarettes to stiffen them up.
Army high tars, hard pack, and I don't have all day.
And the companies adorned them with the advertising for their cigarettes. According to Wikipedia, quote, cigarette cards sets document popular culture and at the turn of the century, often depicting the period's actresses, costumes, and sports, as well as offering insights into mainstream humor and cultural norms, unquote. People being what they are, they found these inserts amusing and began collecting them and trading them with one another as a hobby. Then, in the 20th century, the nature of so-called trading cards fundamentally changed. That's when companies began inserting cards with drawings and then photos, biographies, and statistics of baseball players into their packagings. In 1930, the chewing gum company Topps expanded on this idea and began inserting trading cards for different players in their packs of gum, which kids collected, traded, saved, and were eventually thrown in the trash by their mothers after the boys went off to fight WW2.
Oh my God, Mom, what did you do?
The cards were so collectible that in 1952, Topps got out of the gum game altogether and went all in on baseball cards. This birthed the collectible trading card industry that we know today. Someday, we will get into the whole baseball card boom of the 80s when everyone thought their kids' baseball card collections would send their kids to college, but today is not that day. And also, to be fair, colleges were so cheap that maybe they could have paid for them even without the baseball card frenzy. Until, someone did a
Capitalism.
and fucked all that up for everyone. But it was during this boom cycle for Topps that they released one of the strangest collectible card collections of all time, mocking the biggest toy craze the world had ever seen.
Good parents make Cabbage Patch Kids.
The Cabbage Patch Kids. Each doll is different, and you can pretend to adopt them.
My baby has a real diaper.
You can love and care for them, like your very own.
You're a pal. You're the only one. I love you.
They're each one of a kind. They're Cabbage Patch Kids. You can give them all your love.
Cabbage Patch Kids are each sold separately. Each doll comes with a pretend birth certificate and adoption papers from Coleco.
For more on the Cabbage Patch craze, see episode 389.
Stupid plugs.
The product that Topps brought to market was called the Garbage Pail Kids. There are several places one could start with how the Garbage Pail Kids came to be. I mean, the first might be in 1938 when Morris Shorin bought his way into the family gum business.
Gum?
But for this podcast money, we would start in 1973 when Topps released a pack of peel and stick novelty cards parodying national brands and called them wacky packages.
Sir, care to comment on these wacky packages?
I'm outraged. Kids making fun of my products with these stickers? Look, baby bottle poop. That's just gross.
Wacky packages rule!
These stickers were of the packaging of popular products, renamed with their labels or advertising drawn to look like but mock the brand. So you might have Crust toothpaste with the Logan toothpaste tastes lousy, or Grave Train dog food. Your dog will never eat anything else with a dead dog next to the bowl because that's how hardcore we were back then. We could laugh at that. Or brandages featuring the artwork of a Band-Aid ripping the skin off the wearer. Wacky packages were a quick hit with their kid customers, your humble pod host among them. And as kids in the 70s and 80s, we had very little in a way to personalize our lives. I mean, we had to wear the clothes our parents bought us.
You've seen this boy before on a trampoline made of Sears' famous Toughskin jean fabric. Now Sears introduces Toughskin jeans in a variety of bold new plaids for boys and girls. And once again, just to prove these stylish new Sears perma-pressed fabrics are plenty tough, we asked these kids to put Toughskins to the test. Sears Toughskins, solid or plaid. They're tough jeans to beat.
Shit, you want to know fucking tough? Try going to school in a pair of plaid tough-skin jeans. You'll develop a thick skin real fucking quick. And if we were too young to hang rock and roll posters from magazines on our bedroom walls, and since Trapper Keeper notebooks wouldn't come around for another few years, all we had was our lunchbox and the brown paper shopping bag book covers for our school books to show who we really were. If you were artistically inclined, you drew on your brown shopping bag school book cover, but if you weren't, there were stickers.
I love stickers.
They were cheap, available everywhere, and our childhoods were covered in rainbows, unicorns, trucks with cartoonishly large tires, sports logos, and of course, parodies of all those things slapped on anything that would not get us slapped if we slapped a sticker on it. This isn't even counting the scratch and sniff stickers. A whole generation of kids buried our noses on bubblegum smelling strips of plastic like we were doing blow in a disco bathroom.
That's the one scratch no one wants to sniff.
Topps wacky packages were very much the intro into the world of the weird, personified in the pages of Mad and Cracked magazine and featuring many of the same artists. The initial run from 73 to 77 were some of the best-selling Topps cards during those years, surpassing even the sports cards that were the company's biggest products. Topps would bring them back over the years, but they never attained the heights of popularity that they did in their initial run. However, wacky packages prove that little kids will...
Those bitches will buy anything.
And that set the stage for Topps' next foray into parody trading cards. From an article in Mental Floss, quote, for a new set of wacky packages being developed in 84, a Topps creative consultant named Mark Newgarden came up with an idea parodying the Cabbage Patch Kids doll line called Garbage Pail Kids. Newgarden had artist John Pound draw a package that featured what Pound called a little baby bum in a trash can, unquote. 84 was the height of the Cabbage Patch mania, and after the riots of the previous Christmas, a steady flow of Cabbage Patch dolls and merch was flowing from the toy stores into the homes of children, and the airwaves were dominated by commercials for the dolls, including an animated show featuring the dolls, turning them into yet another commercial.
A crummy commercial?
Yeah, there's nothing like watching a cartoon and seeing a commercial in the cartoon for the product you were watching the cartoon that was based on.
That's capitalism, baby.
So, of course, someone was going to come for the Cabbage Patch Kids, and Topps got there first in a very disgusting fashion. Now, I was aging out of the gross kid stuff market by the time the Garbage Pail Kids came along, but I saw them, and honestly, I was kind of shocked by how disgusting they actually were. I mean, I hate to use the word offensive, but they actually were offensive. That's the story of the Garbage Pail Kids. From a different Mental Floss article, an oral history of the Garbage Pail Kids, quote, vomit, snot, drool, occasionally pus. No oozing orifice went unexplored in the 660 stickers produced by Topps Chewing Gum Incorporated between 1985 and 1988, when its line of Garbage Pail Kids trading cards broke free of convenience store counters to become the single most controversial kids product in the country, with characters like Luke Puke and Messy Tessie dripping bodily fluids and portraits created by talented, even Pulitzer Prize-winning artists. The series delighted an audience obsessed with the gross. While children bought well over 800 million of the mucus-covered cards, adults were mortified. Psychologists wondered if preoccupation with upchuck could affect a child's development. From John Pound, primary artist, Garbage Pail Kids, the idea was to be rude, crude, gross, rebellious, snotty, disgusting, all of these things. I sent them 30 or 50 pages of ideas, including a nice one of a little kid barfing on a baby blanket, unquote. This is an audio medium, so I am now going to describe to you in lurid detail a generic Garbage Pail Kid. You take a Cabbage Patch doll, and you smear it with any kind of viscous substance. Give it a nice sheen of grease or other lubricant. You exaggerate the doll's features, giving it an outlandishly disfigured appendages, eyes that were bloodshot, and hair twisted into a Lovecraftian snarl, and clothing in varying stages of decay, smeared liberally with what were clearly bodily fluids, but just different enough to say that what you were clearly seeing wasn't shit?
Yeah, it definitely was.
Vomit and snot, however, were inbounds and used to great effect, rendering the face of the doll a mask of mucus. Then place the kid in an environment such as the landfill, the dumpster behind a Taco Bell, a dilapidated building, or a filthy bathroom. Give the kids something disgusting to play with, something that's probably dangerous. And the final touch was to name the kids something like Barfing Barbara or Valerie Vomit, and voila, you had a Garbage Pail Kid.
Oh, that is terrible. That's the most appalling, disgusting, revolting thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, the fucking kids loved them. Loved them to the tune of 800 million of the cards being sold. From the New York Times in 1985, quote, Garbage Pail Kids sell at stationery stores throughout the New York metropolitan area, priced at $0.25 a pack for a pack of 5 and a stick of gum included. But these days, they are not easy to find. Waiting online to buy, you can't keep them in stock, said Ciro Musso, the owner of Southgate Card and Gift Shop in Massapequa Park, Long Island. If I got 20 boxes in within an hour, I wouldn't have one left. We had people waiting online to buy them. Norman List, spokesman for Topps Chewing Gum Incorporated, the Brooklyn-based company that manufactures the Garbage Pail Kids, agreed that all across the country the demand is incredible, more than we can keep up with. But he declined to release any sales figures. This is a very, very competitive business, he said, unquote. And more from Mental Floss, quote, Joan Fehrenbacher, owner of an ice cream parlor in California named Candy Alley, told the Los Angeles Times that they were getting 45 calls every day to see if the cards were available. Time and again, parents and reporters were asking, what was the appeal? It may have had something to do with the fact that Garbage Pail Kids came along at the time where kids were big on disgusting hobbies. The Inhumanoids line of toys featured an action figure called Decompose, which could open his rib cage to reveal entrails. Slime, the green glop that got into carpets and never came out, was also big. Stinkor from He-Man carried a very unpleasant smell, unquote. Oh, God, Stinkor. Oh, God, I'd forgotten about Stinkor. It smelled like ass. It smelled like ass, and you bought it and played with it, and then your hands smelled like ass. Your mom would get so angry at you, making you go wash your hands, but you couldn't get Stinkor's ass smell. Oh, sorry, I'm getting distracted by that. As a child of the 80s, I can testify kids loved gross shit, or their boon and tasteless humor all through the era. Pop in any bookstore, and you would find rows of truly tasteless joke books and its imitators, all of which made the bestseller list around the country. Howard Stern was the king of all media, and his imitators dominated morning radio, all of which went into our straight into our underdeveloped brains, shaping our sense of humor for an entire goddamn decade, and maybe even today.
It was glorious.
Maybe it was in response to the giddy optimism of the 80s, or maybe it was just the kids have always liked gross shit. No matter which, disgusting was big and toy companies were making bank on it. So, naturally, some people were going to be very upset by this.
Please, take the stick out of your ass for one night.
Going back to the Mental Floss oral history quote, as popular as the card series was becoming, Some stores reported sales of up to 500 packs a day. It wouldn't be long before the media noticed. In a preview of the tidal wave of negative publicity to come, Chicago Tribune columnist Bob Green wrote 2 stories printed November 17th, 1985 and February 16th, 1986 that took Topps to task for circulating cards that could be used as a tool for bullies in grade school. Bob Green now speaking in the oral history. What prompted them was the teacher and principal being distressed about how terrible the child was being made to feel because the card, which read most unpopular student, had been anonymously left on his desk. Probably had never heard of the cards before. The principal and the teacher told me about what the boy was going through, unquote. That's it? Most unpopular student? Jesus Christ, I was the most unpopular student at least 8 times through my fucking grade school and high school career because I had to move so goddamn often. That's not even bullying. That's just like a statement of facts. I don't know what that merits a fucking... Well, I've got some issues I need to work through, don't I? To be clear, there were limits to what Topps would put on the card, publicly at least. More from Mental Floss's oral history. Quote, religious elements didn't fly. One little gag sketch had a little kid like Moses receiving Garbage Pail Kids stickers instead of the 10 Commandment tablets. Then gags that were suicide related, like someone hanging themselves. You didn't want to promote that as something kids might do or try. There was one of them, a kid in an oven. It got painted, but it didn't get final approval. There was an idea I had of a kid in a pickle jar. It went all the way through to complete painting. Maybe that was an issue of taste or interpretation, like it could have been an aborted fetus. The best card I ever did that they didn't use was a little girl and a dog and a turd. The little girl is pointing at the turd accusingly, looking at the dog, but the dog is pointing equally accusingly at the little girl. They didn't use it because it had 2 characters, unquote. As the backlash built, original Appalachian Artworks of Cleveland, Georgia entered the chat, the makers of the Cabbage Patch dolls. Now, they had discussed licensing the dolls to Topps, but the deal fell through, which partially inspired the parody of the Garbage Pail Kids in the first place. And when the kids became a massive hit, OA, Original Appalachian Artworks, realized that, 1, these disgusting parodies of the dolls were offensive and demeaning to their artistic vision, but most importantly, 2, they had left some money on the table, and now they wanted it, so they filed a $30 million trademark lawsuit against Topps.
I'm just saying it seems a bit excessive.
Well, yes and no. I mean, Topps had taken in over $40 million in sales on their first year of Garbage Pail Kids in 1985 money. That's like $118 million in today's money. And sales remained steady in 86, so the Cabbage Patch saw there was green in the snotty faces of the GPKs. And after winning the first round of the case in federal court, Topps quickly agreed to a settlement with royalties and design changes to make the dolls look less Cabbage Patchy. Of course, the settlement of a lawsuit did not stop the parental backlash who viewed the Garbage Pail Kids as harmful to their little snot monsters. More from Mental Floss, quote, several schools banned Garbage Pail Kids cards from classrooms, taking particular exception to the humorous licenses printed on the back of the card that permitted kids to do forbidden things like eat between meals. A group calling themselves Parents Against Sadistic Toys or PAST, God, the 80s were great for things like that, successfully lobbied Toys R Us locations in Oregon and Washington to stop selling cards in the stores. One of the more dramatic critiques came from the famed underwater explorer Jacques Cousteau, who objected to their release in his native France and even cautioned that kids who collected cards might go off the deep end and end up on cocaine.
I think that's highly unlikely.
Topps could never quite shake the idea that they were rotting kids' minds, especially when they moved their trashy icons into television and movies. It was enough to get a planned Garbage Pail Kids cartoon canceled, but not enough to get a major motion picture deal scuttled featuring the Garbage Pail Kids in their putrescent glory. Yes, pod friends, the Garbage Pail Kids were going Hollywood. We played the trailer at the top of the show, and if that sounded bad, trust me, the movie itself is worse. Again, from Mental Floss, quote, in 1987, Topps signed a deal with a small film studio named Atlantic Releasing for a major motion picture based on the Garbage Pail Kids. Using state-of-the-art special effects, not even for 1987, Atlantic planned on an ambitious live-action family adventure film that would charm children and adults alike. Instead, the result is one of the worst and possibly most off-putting movies ever made. The Garbage Pail Kids made just $661,512 during its opening weekend in August of 1987 and eventually topped out at $1.6 million. And while it was cheap to make with a budget of around $1 million, it was still a disappointment, unquote. You can find this movie on YouTube, pod friends. I wouldn't recommend watching it, but you should check it out. Just drop in anywhere and prepare to be horrified. Not from the content, but just from the acting and special effects. By 1988, the Garbage Pail Kids were done. It wasn't the backlash, because that's the sort of thing that makes kids want more of it. It was mostly just that toy fads come and go. Kids get bored with them and moved on to some new, different, kitschy crap. With the lawsuit, the parental backlash, the canceled series, and the movie flop tops shelves the kids. They'd made their money, and their main mover, baseball cards, was at the peak of the collection frenzy. On top of that, the 80s were winding down, and analog was becoming passé. Nintendo was what all the kids wanted and where the money was moving, so the kids faded from view. But never quite from the memory of these sick little bastards are kind of lodged in the back of Gen X brains and have been edging around in pop culture ever since. There's an avid collector's market online where cards are sold and traded. R.L. Stine of Goosebumps fame released a 3-volume series of the Garbage Pail Kids called Welcome to Smellville in 2020, and Topps is releasing Garbage Pail Kids collector's sets today with classic and new art. The artists involved, which I didn't spend a lot of time talking about, were hugely influential in modern comics and animation. And I suspect much of the Garbage Pail Kids allure was a response to the neon evangelicism of looks, status, and bank ballots that dominated 80s pop culture. It was kind of an antithesis of Robin Leach and Dynasty. Kids react against things around them without fully comprehending the thing it is that they're reacting against, and it's often by embracing the opposite of that thing. And you can't get more 180 degrees opposite than snot-oozing, vomit-smeared children surrounded by squalor and shit. Or I don't know, maybe it's just that the 80s kids really like putrescent. It wasn't just them. Ask any millennial about rotten.com on the internet. Either way, those discussing characters lingers just off stage, waiting for the right time to kind of ooze back into the zeitgeist. And since Gen Alpha are into toilets with human heads sticking out of them singing nonsense song, I suspect that day could be any time now.
What the heck is going on
Yes, yes.
Switch to Verizon Business and get more from your internet without paying more for your internet. Get LTE Business Internet starting at $39 a month when paired with select business mobile plans. That's unlimited data, and with it, unlimited possibilities. Start saving today with Verizon Business, ranked #1 in small business internet customer satisfaction by J.D. Power. Starting price for 25 megabits per second LTE internet plan with smartphone plan savings, plus taxes, fees, and economic adjustment charge. Terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
That is it for the show this week. Okay, there was a kerfuffle with our episode numbers in the past week or two. See, I got this big spreadsheet.
Isn't that for techno geeks with spreadsheet?
With all the names, titles, and topics that goes back to the beginning of the show. And somehow it got 10 ahead. And so we are not celebrating our 10-year anniversary soon. Although chronologically, April will be 10 years. But episode 500 is the observance of 10 years, and that will now come in June. And this is a good thing, honestly, because I got nothing for episode 500, and that extra time...
Can you really get me out of a couple of jams?
So that's the pod news. Do with it what you will, like rating us, reviewing us, kicking us a buck at patreon.com/whatthehellpodcast. You can check out our YouTube page at What the Hell Podcast and doing all the things that Jeremy tells you to do in the closing credits. Otherwise, he's going to force Gavin to start living in the dumpster behind the studio again. And so for me, Dave, looking out the dirty old window, Bledsoe, producer,
I have searched the beat in this dirty town.
Gavin, and all the fictional kids in the garbage pail, we want to say, we're the kids in America, and by God, we do like disgusting things. And we'll see you all next week.
What the Hell Were You Thinking stars Dave Bledsoe and features Gavin St. James and several fictional minions. The show is produced by Kimberly Steele and a part of the Seltzer Kings podcast network. You can find more information on the show on their website, whatthehellpodcast.com, or on Facebook as What the Hell Podcast. Thanks for listening.
I have no ending for this, so I take a small bow.
Grizz.com? Anything?
Seltzer Kings.
Podcasts.